For all of you people out there in this community that want to learn how to wrestle in these video games, and if you ever wondered how it is exactly that we do these things without communication and how it is we're so good at it, I want to tell you that in order to even begin to try to do these things, you first have to understand who you want to be. You have to understand what you want your style to be. You have to understand what your character is first. When I first started out about 3 years ago, I was as generic could get. I was a pretty boy, flamboyant, flashy, heel type person, just like the majority of everybody else is in the community right now. And it wasn't until I went babyface was when all the doors started opening up for me for the things that I could do in the ring. It wasn't until I went babyface until I had to realize, okay, I have to start changing things up because I'm so similar to everybody else. So it's important to get your character down before you try and learn how to wrestle and translate your character into the ring. Now this match right here I'm going to use as a template, as a base to let you into the mind of Scott Barnett, to let you into the mind of Nick Virtue, to understand just how and when we decide when to go for things and when not to go for things, when to give up control and when to take control, and just pretty much how to work off of each other in a match. And I'm gonna shut up now and let you watch this so I don't keep babbling on for 14 minutes. Okay, highlight, I'm gonna babble. Right here is where you start to see the personality and the psyche of Scott Barnett. He chose to do that particular taunt at that particular time after hitting the drop kick because he knows that after hitting that drop kick, it's gonna leave a pretty big gap in between me and him to give me room to follow up with whatever the hell I want to do. And in this case, it's going to be followed up with my clothesline spot. Now here is where a lot of people get confused in matches with myself and a few others. Just because I bounce off of the ropes does not mean that I want you to catch me. Sometimes, or in this particular case very early in the match, after doing this clothesline, I usually want to finish my spot. And depending on, the chemistry that you have with the person, that will determine whether or not they'll pick up on it. And since this is Scott Barnett, he automatically knew what I wanted to do, so he, instead of grabbing me and cock blocking my spot, he let me finish it. Also, he let me finish the spot because he knows that this spot is a setup for a spot for himself. It's a spot within a spot. See? He knows that after I finish that spot, he will be in a better position to continue with what he does than I would be. So it would make sense for him to let me finish the spot because we can just keep going and going and going. But in this particular case, since I trust him enough to keep it going in his own way, I didn't need to follow up with extra stuff that I would do after this spot. Little things like kicking out at one at the beginning of the match after pinfalls or during pinfalls are things that create atmosphere that keep the match pace going the way it would in reality. What the fuck did I just? Reality. Thank you. Okay, now here's where things might get a bit tricky for the beginner. You might not be exactly sure what your opponent wants you to do if you were to do this, if you were to back away from you after a pinfall. So the best thing to do might just be to trust him and follow him and walk towards him after that fact, which is exactly what I'm going to do in this case because I might not be sure what Scott Barnett wants me to do. So I'm going to walk towards him and maybe he'll give me a clue. And obviously him jumping over the top rope onto the apron was his clue of letting me know he wants me to knock him off. Ah, yes, one of my favorite parts. This is where, how do I say this? This is kind of like a fake out spot. Not in terms of faking out my opponent, but in terms of faking out the people watching. Normally, what I would do in this case when I signal, that whatchamacallit, whatever the fuck that taunt is, it usually signals that I'm going to do an outside dive or I'm going to do something crazy, I guess. So, with me doing this now, when he is still able to get up in the fashion that he did this early in the match, I'm letting him know that I want you to follow me and catch me when I come off of the ropes. Because there's no way in hell that I'm going to hit the ropes at the same time do an outside dive and just have you standing there looking stupid waiting for me to dive on you. So yeah. And because Scott Barnett is such a smug son of a bitch, he's gonna do the same thing, which leads to a greater quality match, which leads to this fast-paced back and forth action between me and him. And here's where match pacing and knowing your opponent comes into play. I say knowing your opponent because Scott Barnett, I know that Scott Barnett is a technical person, and me putting him in a submission this early in the match is useless, and he's gonna break out early. I want him to break out early because I know the end animation of breaking this cattle mutilation would result in another opening spot where he can probably take advantage of, while also at the same time keeping the same pace of the match. Now, where most people have trouble in matches is knowing when to give up control and or how to give up control, and submission moves are a good way to let your opponent know that, hey, I don't want control anymore, you take over. And this is essentially what I'm doing in this case. I'm letting Scott Barnett know that, hey, I want you to take control of the match after you break out of this sleeper hold. And we're back to the little things. Now, mind you, from here on in, Scott Barnett does not see this coming. I took it upon myself to display my character and my quote-unquote tenacity in the ring and make it look like I want to stay on top of my opponent. But Barnett doesn't know that. He knows that he's still in control, and he doesn't expect me to do what I'm about to do now, which in the end still keeps him in control, but it just adds that element of that personality in me coming out, and it adds that other element of seamless spot to spot, motion to motion events, I guess you could call it. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. It happened so fast that you probably didn't even see what happened. What I did was, as soon as I got up, I sprinted at him, and I knew that he wouldn't know that I do that, and he'll try to grab me, thus resulting in him hitting his rebound move. And since I know Barnett, since I know him as my opponent, I know that he has two different rebound moves, and most likely he would have gotten the drop toe hold, in which I thought would have looked cool at that time. Now, I'm not telling you to always run at your opponent when you get up, because bad things can happen. I just thought that it would be a good thing at that particular point in time. Again, the little things. Now, sadly, this situation doesn't present itself in the right fashion that it should, which would be after finishers sometimes. But you'll find that often, well, not maybe often, but sometimes after you do a pinning combination, your opponent would stay on the ground and they won't get back up. And what I like to do in those situations is pin them again. Because how many times do you see in a match, in whether it be WWE or Japanese wrestling, where if somebody kicks out of a move they thought that they shouldn't have kicked out of, they pin them again. So that's what I like to do. I like to bring that element to the match, even though the moves that I do before pinning them the last time would be some weak ass move like a German suplex with a pin bridge or some crap like that. Sadly, it's not after finishers, but yeah. Now here's something that I think is lacking in a lot of matches that I watch, and it's the lack of trust between the people in the match. Right here is one of the leverage pin thingamabobs, and in order to pull these things full sequence, you have to trust your opponent to reverse it instead of panicking and breaking the sequence and letting him out of the pin. Also, what I see lack in most matches are near pinfalls. Excuse me. What most people like to do is when right after the referee hits 2, they like to break the count. I do that sometimes too, but what I like to do as the match progresses, as it gets later into the match, I like to wait and see if my opponent is gonna kick out late in the 2 count, like right before the referee's hand comes down for 3. Because when you see guys just kick out at 2 all the time, every single time in the match, it kind of takes away from the atmosphere, it kind of takes away from the story being told, and I wish I'd see that happen more in matches. Yep, there we go, first botch of the match. What I wanted to do was I wanted to get that animation where he'll turn around and be groggy, but the game said, fuck you, Nick, we're gonna make him fall on the ground. As a result, I have to pick him back up and retry the spot again. It sucks, but it's a part of wrestling in video games. Shit happens. And this goes back to having character. Again, Scott Barnett is a very smug, cocky son of a bitch sometimes, and he uses that to give me openings. He uses that to give his opponent openings to where we can catch him slipping. And it's my job to take that and feed off of it. It's my job to take that and keep it going. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the same thing. And we're right back to creating openings for your opponent. What I like about this particular spot is it gives the illusion that I'm still on offense, when in actuality I'm just waiting to receive a rebound move from Scott Barnett. Now right here we're about mid-match, and here's where ring psychology comes into play. He's obviously targeting my legs, but it's important to notice that he's doing it now, mid-match, not early in the match. And it's important to notice that he's targeting my legs now, mid-match, instead of early in the match. Because if he were to do this early in the match, it would completely demobilize me and keep me from being able to keep up with him. It would keep me from being able to go spot to spot to spot. And by him doing this mid-match, while we got all the high-paced action out of the way, it gives him time to slow things down. It gives us both time to slow things down and get methodical. Now it's time to get back to the little things. Now, the way I like to treat submissions like these where you can crawl to the ropes is I like to stretch it out. I like to play towards the whatchamacallit. I like to play it emotionally. Meaning that, you know, when sometimes guys get put in submissions when it's late or mid-match and they have an injury or they have a history of problems with said area that's being applied in a submission hold, they kind of linger there on the mat in that hold for a while until they start to try and crawl to the ropes. And even as they're trying to crawl to the ropes, they might stop. They might stop and have the person that's applying the hold apply more pressure to give that illusion of it's really fucking hurting them. So they kind of scratch and crawl their way to the ropes slowly, instead of just, as soon as the hold gets applied, they just scamper to the ropes non-stop. So by me selling this submission the way that I do, it makes it more immersive, and it makes it more emotional for the people watching, because they don't know whether or not I'm gonna tap out. Well, of course they see the freaking big dumbass red breaking point on the screen, but you know where I'm going with it. Now this is a great example of being a good heel. How many times have you seen the heel apply a submission hold to the babyface, and right as he gets to the ropes, he breaks it and drags him back into the middle of the ring and applies it again? You see that all the time, and Barnett does a great job of recreating those situations, further immersing the people in the match. Again, like I said, I like to sell the submission as if it's really fucking hurting me. I don't want to scamper towards the rope so fast where it completely takes away from it. I like to sit, like right now, I like to sit there and let it rest to make it look like I'm tired and having a hard time getting to the rope. And here we have my very first reversal of this match. If you have been watching all this time and you're at this point, you would also know that this is my first actual reversal of this match. And why I chose to reverse at this particular point in time is because, to me, I felt that if I reversed now, it would open up a better door for me to take control and completely change the pace of the match. Now, want to know why I just did that? Couldn't fucking tell you, because I don't know. That's called a brain fart. It will happen to you. It happens to all of us. But good workers know how to recover from brain farts such as this and keep the match going. Now, to avoid these brain farts, you could maybe taunt towards the crowd. That always works. Strike exchanges. Usually all matches have them at one point or another, and it's essential in matches as well because it creates this moment, this atmosphere of who is going to get the upper hand. And usually, normally you want to do this maybe twice a match. You don't want to go over that because then it just gets repetitive. Now the key to agreeing or understanding who's gonna win the battle, who's gonna win the exchange of chops or punches or kicks, is usually either up to your judgment or up to your opponent's judgment. It's tricky. This is probably one of the trickier subjects because it's after the battle is what's more important. What do you do after that? Which is why it's important to establish who's gonna win, because if the wrong person wins, then it can kind of reset the match. I wouldn't want to win this battle because I have had control for the last couple of seconds, so I think it would be better if I lose. Now that was so totally not planned. It kind of looked like I drop kicked over his back spin kick, but it happened that way because I was a bit too anxious to receive control after the pin attempt, because I wasn't sure whether or not he would want me to take control. I'm not exactly sure how you would avoid this because my style, how I like to work, is quick, and if you want me to take control, then I'm gonna fucking take control. I don't like waiting to see whether or not you're gonna want me to take control if we're that close together. So it's up in the air with me. I don't know. I don't know how you would avoid doing that. And another one of my favorite parts. This one is kind of personal to me because I personally don't see anybody else doing it but me, and I hope it stays that way because I'll get kind of pissed off. But anyway, this one takes timing, whether it be in the beginning of the match, middle of the match, or towards the end of the match. But normally I like to do it mid-match and at the beginning of the match. At the end of a match, it'd be pointless. Did I just say at the end of the match twice? I don't know. But anyway, at the beginning and at the middle, in the middle of a match, that's when I like to do it. But what I do is I throw them into the ring and I come in on an angle, because if you come in too close to them, you'll just end up sprinting at the apron. So I kind of take a wide turn and slide into the ring. And if it's in the beginning of the match, I have to time it, so I have to stall out me running off of the ropes. But if it's towards the middle of the match where I'm already damaged, I have to straight shoot and sprint towards the rope immediately, so it would give my opponent time to get back up and receive me. And that is a little something we like to call hiccups, and it usually happens when you're anxious. Scott Barnett is a very anxious worker, as am I, and sometimes when we're too anxious, those things can happen. And to avoid that, you obviously just don't be so anxious. I don't know how to explain this, because in my mind, I timed that perfectly. In my mind. But obviously the game disagrees with what I think and decides to fuck me. Now maybe if I would have waited awkwardly for another second to go by, I would have been able to pull this off. But since I misjudged the game and I thought the game would be on my side, it decided to fuck me in the ass. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Obviously, it didn't work. To avoid that, hope and pray that the game doesn't fuck you. Now most of you know what follows this, and obviously you can see that I can't do it, because I don't have a signature. I don't have a signature because I fucked up and mistimed my comeback. I should have waited a little earlier in the match to do it. I should have waited a little bit later in the match to do it, maybe a couple of seconds. But I do not have a signature to complete my comeback. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna forfeit and I'm gonna go for the pin, thus giving up my control because I done fucked up. As you can see now, I just got a Siggy, which means that at the pace that this match is going right now at, which is obviously progressing, it's obviously heightening, the match is obviously getting pushed to its climax with all these pin attempts late in the match. I can now peak the climax with what I'm about to do now. I shit you not, he didn't see that coming. Now this is important. This is very, very, very important. I just hit a rare finisher, which now means that Scott Barnett has to top that. We now, me and him, we have to top this moment in this match. Because it can't go down, it just has to get better. So we have a responsibility to the people watching to now top that shit. Okay, I was expecting him to hit me with the lariat after he kicked out of the Envy, but he drop kicked me. I guess he brain farted. So I took it upon myself to then further escalate the match and super kick him point blank range. I took it a step further, and now we have to top that. Now see, this was all my fault. All of it. All my fault. Batnick, he was going for the lariat, in which he did hit right in the back of my head. But him hitting it full flush could have escalated the match further. And because I decided to throw a tantrum and try and attack the ref, showing my emotion, which I guess was a good thing, but then it was a bad thing because it fucked up the escalation of the match. Now Barnett has to try and find a different way to hit the lariat to escalate the match, even though already giving it away that that is what he was going to do. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he doesn't know either. I don't know why the game would make me no sell that, but anyway, shutting up now. Now here is another important part, and this is one of the reasons why I love Scott Barnett. This moment right here ties into knowing your opponent's finish. He knows that it's very late in the match, we done did all of this shit, and he knows what my finishing move is. And so he's playing to it, telling me that he wants to end the match. Him backing up into the corner, signaling as if he wants to do something after the fact of him already hitting his finisher. He's trying to make it look like he wants to hit it again, when in actuality all he's doing is setting me up to finish the match. Now I'm sure some of you have already seen this ending, and I commend people like Scott Barnett for doing this, because I don't see a lot of people who do this, who directly set their opponent up for their specific finish. And in this case, I'm pretty sure you can already see what's coming. And would you like to know why I'm not going for the pin? Couldn't fucking tell you, because I don't know. I don't know why I decided to do this. I guess I'm just being big-headed, and I'm going to majorly botch this, like so. And like so. Now this is a personal problem that I have with myself. Most of the time, I get ideas to do different shit in matches, and 9 out of 10 times it comes back to bite me in the ass. I don't think things through before I do them. I go on the fly. And this is one of those moments where I should have just completely ignored myself and did what the fuck I was supposed to do, which was end the match. But no, I have to try and do extra shit. Well, it's been a frickin' half an hour, and I apologize for taking up that much time, but if you're one of those people who had trouble translating your character into your matches, or if you're one of those people who had trouble wrestling in video games, period, I hope that this video taught you at least a little bit, because over the years I've started to see an influx and a growth in the community of people who want to actually do this. people who actually enjoy working matches together instead of, the competitive nature of the game. I would also like to note that this video would not have been made if it were not for Scott Barnett himself, who gave me the idea to do this. I was gonna make a series, like a Selling 101 Part 2 thingamabob that I used to do like a year or two ago. But this was a better idea, and I think it kind of worked. So yeah, thanks for watching.